After tons of oil spilled directly into the sea, hundreds of sea creatures came ashore. When a fisherman saw something covered in oil, he came closer and realized it was a mermaid. Without a doubt, he decided to take such a rare find home. The fishing village of Palacios is struggling to survive an environmental disaster, an oil spill at sea. Local fishermen have been out of work for a year since the toxic substances had spread for hundreds of miles, killing sea inhabitants daily. To prevent an economic crisis and get their jobs back, fishermen are taking part in cleaning up the pollution in the sea. One of the coast's best sailors, nicknamed Sharko, becomes another oil spill victim. During the cleanup, he inhales a large amount of sprayed dispersant and falls overboard, receiving chemical burns on part of his body. After the tragic accident, the man became disabled and can only breathe with the help of an oxygen tank. Sharko takes the tragic incident hard because now life at sea has been taken from him. From a successful fisherman, who got his nickname by catching fish as easy as a great white shark, he becomes an isolated outcast, joked about by his former colleagues. Walking along the coast daily, Sharko finds corpses of birds and fish covered in a thick layer of oil. He sends them to the front office of the oil company responsible for the oil spill. Despite the lingering danger, the senator assures the villagers that the sea has been thoroughly cleaned of chemicals. The excited fishermen gather at the bar and talk about their past adventures at sea. Sharko also walks into the bar and listens in silence to the tales of his former colleagues. One of the men excitedly recounts how their crew got lost, and a pack of hungry mermaids surrounded their boat. To make the story more intense, he describes how the mermaids dragged him overboard and began biting off pieces of meat from him. The bar patrons are skeptical about his story, but the man exposes his torso and shows the bite marks. The fishermen are preparing for the new fishing season starting tomorrow. Sharko decides to break the silence and tells the fishermen that there will be no fish this year because the bay water is still filled with oil residue. He advises them not to get their hopes up and says that everything the senator says about the sea being cleaned is a lie. The fishermen don't take Sharko seriously, thinking he is just speaking out of hatred. After the bar, Sharko sits in his car, lost in his sadness. His former shipmate, Breezy, knocks on his door and asks to borrow his boat. He had screwed Sharko over before, and since then, he has not trusted his ex-partner, so he refuses to do him a favor. The next day, the fishermen go out into the ocean while Sharko sits at home listening to their conversations on the radio transmitter. Despite the man's warning, they all happily anticipate a great catch. Feeling angry and helpless, Sharko freaks out and turns off the receiver. The man goes to the Gulf shore again, where he finds a dead fish thrown ashore. He takes the fish with him as proof and is about to leave when suddenly he notices a massive fin of something in the distance, sticking out from behind some rocks. Sharko decides to check what other dead critters were thrown on the shore and comes closer to the rocks. Looking at his find, the fisherman realizes that he found a real mermaid and retreats in horror. Having recovered from the shock, the man decides to check if the mermaid is alive and pokes her with a stick. Sharko, overwhelmed with happiness, gets no reaction and decides to take the creature he found home with him. At home, Sharko fills the bottom of the bathtub with ice and places the mermaid's lifeless body there. The voices of other fishermen are heard on the radio, who encounter only deformed fish in the ocean and slowly begin to realize that Sharko was right. But the man no longer cares about the recognition of his fellow fishermen because today, he caught the biggest catch of his life. He looks at his reflection in the mirror, removes his oxygen tank, and covers the mangled part of his face with his palm. He now feels confident and full of energy, just as he was before his accident. Still, in joyous euphoria, Sharko takes the radio under his armpit and starts to dance and sing along to a song about the fisherman's daughter. Suddenly his merriment is interrupted by a phone call. He receives a call from a lawyer offering to participate in a class action lawsuit against the oil company that caused him to suffer last year. Sharko does not listen to the lawyer and hangs up on him. After the call, he sinks back into his depressed state and spends the rest of the day drinking and watching television. Sharko is distracted from his dreary pastime by sounds coming from the bathroom. The man cautiously sneaks into the bathroom and notices that his find is alive and very aggressive. The fisherman closes the door to his room for the umpteenth time. Armed with his gun, he goes back into the bathroom, where the enraged mermaid immediately attacks him. The man falls and drops the gun. A scuffle ensues, during which the mermaid bites the fisherman's hand. He eventually wins, gets the mythical creature off of himself, and throws a fishing net over her. After putting the mermaid back in the bathtub, Sharko points his gun at her. The mermaid looks him straight in the eye, intoxicating his mind with her languid gaze. Obedient to her seduction, the fisherman puts his gun down. Sharko goes to the supermarket the next day to buy his guest food. When he returns home, he cleans the oil from the mermaid's gills to make it easier for her to breathe. Then he cuts the netting around her mouth and offers her to choose food from what he had bought home. The mermaid nods at the steak and crams it down from the fisherman's hands. Sharko spends his day over a can of beer in front of the television screen. This evening he decides to share his leisure time with the mermaid and brings the television into the bathroom. Sitting next to the tub, the man tells his guest the plot of the TV series he is watching. He confesses that his immigrant father learned English from the show. During the fisherman's revelations, the mermaid tries to reach out to grab the man stealthily, but he remains vigilant. After a while, Sharko falls asleep right in the bathtub. The mermaid bares her sharp teeth, ready to pounce on the defenseless fisherman at any moment. But her plans to eat human flesh are thwarted again, this time by an intruder who bursts into the man's house. Disturbing noises awake Sharko, and he returns to the living room to find out who has come to see him. The intruder turns out to be Breezy, stoned out of his mind, wanting to steal the radio from his former boss secretly. Sharko yells at the burglar and tells him to get out of the house before he calls the police. An altercation breaks out between them, and because of Sharko's health, his opponent has a clear advantage in strength. The heated situation is saved by the mermaid, who bangs her tail against the side of the tub. Breezy makes his way into the bathtub, where he discovers the mythical girl. Out of amazement, he calms down and tells Sharko that he can sell the catch for a great deal of money. But Sharko is adamant and plans to release the mermaid back into the ocean after the water is clear of oil. The former shipmate tells Sharko that mermaids cannot be kept in a bathtub, so he builds a makeshift aquarium inside the house out of whatever he had lying around. Sharko suggests that his old partner give up drugs and stay at his house to help him with the mermaid. He doesn't listen to his old boss and continues to fool around, proud that he has seen a mermaid. Sensing something amiss, Sharko warns him that he must not tell anyone about his find, or the mermaid will be hunted down. He suggests they work together again as a team and keep their catch a secret. Breezy stays sour and reminds Sharko that he constantly told him off in the past. Sharko responds by saying he acted that way because he saw his true potential and wanted to see him reach it. After those words, Breezy calms down and smiles, glad that someone sees something good in him. Left alone, Sharko launches the mermaid into the aquarium and watches the unusual girl mesmerized. Later, the man turns on Frank Sinatra on the record player and prepares a romantic dinner for two. He throws a piece of steak into the aquarium and quotes a scene from a show where two main characters are on a date. Sharko goes on and opens up about his childhood to her. Since he and his father were immigrants, they were not well received in their new country. The Ku Klux Klan even came to their home, threatening their family and forbidding them from fishing in the ocean. The man sadly admits that he took his fall overboard hard. He feels that his failure has undone all his father's efforts, who fought for a decent life for them. The mermaid stares at Sharko again and hypnotizes him with her gaze. They are interrupted by a knock at the door. The man cautiously opens the door and sees a stranger whose face is hidden in the shadow. In a playful voice, the visitor asks him if he recognizes her and steps out into the light. An impossibly beautiful girl appears before the man's eyes. She thanks him for saving her life and willingly goes inside the house. The stunned fisherman cannot take his eyes off the beautiful stranger. Meanwhile, the mermaid sits gracefully in an armchair and reminds Sharko that he has not finished telling her the story of his past. Shocked to realize that the mermaid has turned into a real girl, he checks the aquarium and sees that it is empty. The girl says she is a mermaid and thanks him for caring for her. She says that the oil companies and corrupt politicians don't care about them and don't understand how scary it is to see all that oil. She repeats all the thoughts that go through the man's mind daily, for he too has been a victim of indifference and negligence. The girl continues to seduce Sharko and tells him that he is the only good man among them all. The mermaid comes close to him and removes his oxygen machine. She puts her palm on his mutilated face, and his scars disappear. After everything, the girl smiles and kisses Sharko. Mesmerized by her, he gives himself entirely to the seduction. They spend the rest of the evening as if in a romantic movie. The mermaid plays a Sinatra record, and they begin to dance together. They make love, after which the girl listens with rapturous eyes to Sharko's stories from his childhood. In bed, the mermaid recounts the horror that living creatures experience because of the oil spill, and the man confesses that he wished every day he had died back then in the ocean until he met her. Embarrassed, the girl says she liked his favorite TV show, and they begin quoting scenes from it together. Their perfect night is interrupted by the headlights of a car arriving at his house. Sharko comes outside in his aged appearance and sees that several fishermen from the bar have gathered on his property. They tell the man he was right, the entire catch is oil-soaked for miles. The fisherman asks Sharko if he is really hiding a mermaid. Sharko realizes that Breezy has set him up again and blabbered to everyone about his find. The men want to take the mermaid away from Sharko, arguing that they need to feed their families. The fisherman advises his colleagues to find another job, as he will not give up his prey. After these words, the men are even more aggressive. Sharko pretends to agree with their demands and suggests they wait while he goes after the mermaid. Instead, he grabs a loaded gun and points it at the fisherman. They try to calm the man down, but he is not messing around and orders the intruders off his property. Breezy thinks he is bluffing but immediately has a bullet shot right under his feet in return. Enraged, Sharko shouts that he is the king of the ocean and no one will ever take his mermaid away from him. Frightened by his behavior, The fishermen decide to leave. He goes back home to the mermaid floating in the aquarium. He tells her that no one can separate them. Sharko leans his palm against the aquarium and offers to talk a walk to the ocean. Succumbing to the joyous euphoria, he removes his oxygen machine and sets his stepladder up against the aquarium. His mind conjures images of the clear ocean, seagulls roaming freely along the coast, and him and the mermaid running toward the water. In reality, he reaches out his hand to pull the mermaid out of the aquarium. Instead, the magical creature drags Sharko into the water. They swim toward each other, but the mermaid bites into the fisherman's neck instead of a long-awaited kiss. Finally, her hunt for a human has ended successfully. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.